Okay, yeah, I'm like 12 years old and I'm in Haiti and I'm with my best friend Andy and we're having a rock fight. And I feel like we had rock fights a lot. I don't know why looking back, rock fights seem like a really dumb idea, but as a kid we had rock fights all the time. And if my memory serves me, which it probably doesn't because I say we alter our memories every time, the people we were fighting were Andy's neighbors, these two kids, and they were brothers, and they were rich Haitians, and they just thought they were so cool, and they thought they kind of ran the neighborhood. We lived on this mountain, and we had this main road, and so we were always kind of having run-ins with these neighbors. I didn't like them, put it that way. So they had the advantage for the moment because they were up on this hill and they were throwing these huge boulders down at us. I mean, like rolling them down the hill, and they probably weren't that huge. I'm 12, so I think they were bigger than they were. But still, they're coming down, and me and Andy were training to be ninjas, which is a story for another day, but we were legit. Actually, my friend Andy went to Japan and got his black belt after high school or college, I think. So he followed through on our dream. I did not follow through. But at the time, we were pretty, nimble. And these boulders were no big deal for us. They're throwing them down. But they still had the advantage for the moment because they had the high point. Now, the problem was for them is that we were on this road. And so the hill went up like this. There come the boulders. The road is here. My friend's Andy's house is here, and their house was here. So they had to come down the hill to the road and then run to get to their house, which at some point they, of course, did. So they're rolling down boulders, we're throwing rocks up, and at some point they make a break for it. So they send a couple more boulders down, no big deal, we dodge them, and they make this run for this curved driveway. I can see it. Their house is right here, and they have to run this curved driveway to their house. So they get to the road, no problem, and one of them, I don't remember exactly. This is the part I do remember exactly. One of them is running down the curved driveway, and I pick up a rock. And I'm like David right now. I mean, this is Goliath. I'm David. I'm throwing this rock in the air. I got this. And I got these voices in my head telling me, you are a badass. You can take these guys. You're the shit. And also, might want to be careful here. Should you do this? Is this a good idea? So I take this rock. I see this guy. He's running like this, and I can see the calculations like in a movie out of my head, like all the angles, and it's like, airplane shooting the missile at the MiG, whatever. It's just, I can see it. He's running, and I'm like a quarterback leading his receiver. I know I've got to send it in front of him so he'll run into the rock. So I take it up, and I let it go. And I let this thing go, and maybe 1 or 2 seconds later, he falls to the ground, screaming, blood everywhere. And I have that voice again of like, you are such a badass. You are the shit. And also, you are going to be in so much trouble when your parents find out. Fast forward, the kid ended up with 10 to 20 stitches. I don't remember exactly. And my dad had an earful for me when I got home. I mean, my dad's been mad at me maybe 2 or 3 times in my life, like mad that they stand out. You probably have those parent moments where you're like, yeah, I got in trouble a lot, but no, this one was like next level trouble. I was in such trouble, and they told me if I'd hit him in the temple, I could have killed him. I mean, I ended up hitting him right here. It was literally a perfect shot. And I got in trouble, yada, yada. Long story short, though, those guys never messed with us again. So maybe the most amazing part of the story, besides just having rock fights and what a dumb idea that is who is this voice in our head? And this is not a new question by any means. I remember the first time I read Anthony DeMello talking about the I and the me, and this idea that we have these two selves, or these two parts of us talking. And this has been said a million different ways, a million different times. The Self and the Ego, or the Collective and the Personal Unconscious by Carl Jung. You've got Flesh and Spirit, which kind of talks about this in a religious way, sometimes subbing ego for spirit. You've got mind and body and psyche and soma. You've got total organism environment versus total organism level. Ken Wilber does all kinds of stuff on this. You've got the I and the me, or the social self and the response to it, from George Herbert Mead. You've got the id and the ego and the superego. And it goes on and on. You've got the self and the not self, which is really trippy. Just the idea that we have these two pieces of us at all. Ken Wilber explains it this way: when you think of yourself as having a body, you say, I have a body. You don't say, I am a body. He says you have a body in the same way we would say, I have a car, which is just kind of a mind game for a second, because why do we say, I have a body? What part of us is saying we have, right? So it goes on, and maybe you could just say it like this: we've all experienced this voice of, you are awesome, you are amazing, you shouldn't do this, you could do this, maybe you don't want to do this, you might regret this, this is not the job for you, this is not the relationship for you, this is going to be fun, but tomorrow morning, you are so much better than this. Get off your ass. Why the hell are you doing this again? You know you don't have to do this. It goes on and on and on. This voice in our head. And again, you can come at it from any angle you want, just psychology or spirituality or philosophy or you name it. It's hard to disagree with the idea that we have these two voices that are always speaking to us. Maybe my favorite explanation is a Cherokee story. It's attributed to the Cherokee tribe, at least. And it goes something like this. A grandson comes to his grandfather and says, I have these two voices in my head. One of them is kind of lending me towards evil or negative things, and one of them is lending me towards positive or good things. What's going on? And the grandfather says, well, these are the two wolves, the wolf of negativity and the wolf of positivity. And the wolf that you feed will be the wolf that speaks louder to you. So be careful which wolf you feed. So it's always been in humanity, this idea that we have some part of us that is able to talk to some other part of us. And it's always fascinated me, because I hope I'm not the only, I know I'm not the only one, and I know you are too. These voices are going all the time. And what do we do with them? And I think my bigger question is, what are they arguing for? What is the ego trying to tell me that the true self isn't? Or what is the id trying to tell me? Or it goes on and on. What are they debating? Why are they different? Why is it ever in my life that I have one thing telling me, let's do this, and something else inside my own brain or self telling me, you might not want to do this? Or one part of me telling me, this is the coolest thing ever, you are such a badass, and this other part of me telling me, you are such an idiot, why are you doing this? It's so weird. And so there's been all kinds of talk about what they're trying to say. I think morality is a big one, right? I mean, it can come down to just good and evil. And this is, I think, where religion or spirituality often goes. We have this voice, the devil and the angel. The devil trying to lead us toward bad, and the angel trying to lead us toward good. But even that question is a little bit like, but what is that? What is good and evil? And there's a lot of debate on the ego sometimes being very healthy, because we need this inflated confidence or arrogance or this inflated view of the ego self in order to do certain things. So that gets problematic for me. Another one is just the marshmallow experiment. You probably have heard it, the Stanford experiment. It's very famous now. They took kids and they said to them something along the lines, you can have one marshmallow now, or you can wait 30 minutes and have two marshmallows. And they've gone on to say that the kids who wait for the 30 minutes later have much more successful lives. They're better business people. They're better this and that. You can find all you want about the studies. Interestingly enough, they just found the same thing in cuttlefish, which is crazy to me. They found that cuttlefish have this ability to delay, I think it's a grass shrimp or something, and to wait for a king shrimp, which they appreciate more. I might have mixed up, but there's two different shrimp. One of them they like more than the other, and they've developed this whole cage of some kind, which is maybe more mind-boggling to me than the fact that the cuttlefish even chooses this. But they gave the cuttlefish the opportunity to go in this door now and get this shrimp, or to wait, and it learns and knows that if it waits 20 minutes, this door will open where it's a shrimp that it really wants. This one will be gone, but they get this one. And the cuttlefish has this amazing ability to choose and wait. So this is self-control, or delayed gratification, which is a huge thing, which relates to morality in many ways, but not always in the ways we think it does. So maybe it's just that, the one voice is telling me, get it all now, and the other voice is saying maybe get more later, or have better results later. Or maybe it's fear and love. That used to be my favorite. Anthony Mello said everything in the world can be reduced to fear or love. So at its root, everything comes from this sense of fear or love. But I think I'm at the point now where I think the two voices are leading to either, and this should be no surprise if you saw the last video, bigger or smaller. That's the battle of the two voices that are always in my head. And I hope it's obvious. I think it's obvious. Big is not like a bigger house, bigger car, bigger bank account. Big is a bigger world, and a more diverse world, and more broad world, a more broad breadth of experience and culture and perspective. And small is not a small house or a small car or a small bank account. It's that word of like withdrawing into yourself, or that shrinking back. You know that feeling you have when you get really excited about something, you kind of throw it out into the room and the response isn't that great, and it's immediately just kind of you even physically shrink back, but your soul and your self also just shrinks away, and you think, maybe I won't do that next time. Or this idea of my world becomes smaller and smaller. So I like to just put all the safe people into a very confined space of nation or culture or belief system. And sometimes the smaller and more confined it gets, the better I feel. That's the kind of small I'm talking about versus the kind of big I'm talking about. The big creative, the big wonder, the big risks, the big, it's okay to try this and fail. And I've come to truly believe that that's the battle inside all of us. This big versus small, which is interesting because I think the ego likes the small too, because the ego likes things contained and not big risks, so that we can feed that ego and make it feel even better. Versus this idea of this true self, or whatever you want to call it. And again, people have called it every name imaginable just about. But this other self, which seems to be bigger. And it's interesting, Ken Wilber says that every major religion, and I would add philosophy, spirituality, whatever, has at the end result kind of this idea that we are a part of everything. So you could say that the end goal of, again, enlightenment or happiness or discovering who we really are is this idea that there isn't really this thing and this thing. It's just all of this thing. In fact, it gets so big that the lines between what I am and what someone else is, and what I am and what this universe is, or the environment, start to fade away, because it's just all one thing. Now that is big, and that is cool. And once we go there, these ideas of withdrawing or shrinking back or feeling small or contained or making sure that my people are here and I can understand who I am and be with them and feel safe with them, they all start to fade away, because there is no such thing as any of those. So I guess I'm at this point where I'm really starting to analyze the voices in my head, because they still come. I'm not the kid with the rock anymore, but I'm the middle-aged man with the proverbial rock all the time. Or I'm the man who's always trying to decide if I should risk this or go for this or do this or do this. And I always have those voices, the same voices saying, you are such a badass, you can do this, man, wait until the world sees you. And also, you are such an idiot, and why would you ever do this? and also you're so much better than this, and also you're so much worse than this. And the voices keep going, and I'm really starting to analyze them based on one thing. Is this a bigger world, a bigger self, a bigger me in it, a more broad, diverse, global, equal thing? Or is this something smaller where I might feel great for a second, but at the end of the day it's more contained and keeping me withdrawing and shrinking back and afraid of everything? And so it's really made me start to think about all of these things and all of these voices, and coming back to that Cherokee story, it's really made me think about this. Which one of these voices am I feeding? Because the one I feed will be the one I hear more often than not. So am I feeding the big voice, or am I feeding the small voice?